And even though this is about Padlet and Blendspace, how many of you are also familiar with Nearpod? So you have at least a little bit of a sense. And so I wanted to go through, it's my favorite tool, so I figured I'd merge all three together. But what you're looking at on this screen is the teacher side. What you're looking at on your screen is the student side. But we're going to walk through and talk about how these different tools can work with what you guys are doing in terms of literacy and writer's workshop, and how you can make them work for what you're already doing in your classroom. So by the end of today and this lesson, what I hope you come away with are these different levels of understanding. I want you to be able to apply this to create your own resource for your own classroom. You'll have some independent time, some discovery time. I want you to just be able to explain how these tools can be used instructionally. They're both great as just a teacher tool, something for you to house resources to use with students, but also for students to use themselves. So we'll talk a little bit about both of the different ways that they can be done. And then just on the basic level, we'll find some resources that you're going to be able to use in your classroom with your students. So we'll go ahead and start off with a little bit of a poll. On your screen, you're going to see the the student side of things. And on my screen, I'm going to see what you guys are saying as students. So go ahead and answer that poll question for me. How familiar are you with Blendspace? What I can do with Nearpod then, after we see our little poll, is I can share the results with the entire group. So for the most part, we have some B's and C's. You've heard of it. Some people, you've used it once or twice, so that's great. So you have some idea, but what hopefully you'll come away with is, again, how can you use that with your students, whether it's with just basic literacy in your content area, social studies, math, science, or how you can use it in those readers' workshop situations. So to start with, just Blendspace is a really easy resource for instruction and assessment. You can have both of those pieces built in. It can be as simple as just straight up resources, but they do have an option to add quizzes. You can also add things like Microsoft Forms, because I know you guys have started working a bit with Office 365. So you can embed those Microsoft Forms right in there and have student data as you're going through. You can put videos, images, PDFs, all of that stuff, and it's really as simple as searching, dragging, dropping. It really takes very little time and effort to make one. It is web-based, which is perfect for you guys, especially with your device selection. So you guys all have is it the laptop or the Chromebook? Which one do you guys have? Laptop. So it's perfect for the laptop, but you do, I know, also have a lot of iPads, so you also can have the iOS device there. All right, so like I said, it really is as simple as dragging and dropping. You search, you drag, you drop. Now the class side of it, I don't know that we're going to have time to really get into that piece, but we don't need to get into that piece because that's really if you're recording the student results, you're tracking all of that information. I'll double check with Jess about some of the parent permissions on that piece of it. Because I do think you have to have parent permission. But what I've got in here is you should have a web link. You should be able to click on the link that is available. And this is one that back when I was still here at Crabapple Crossing, I had set up. I've made some adjustments to it to add in some other pieces. But it really is, like, so for example, you see colonial America. So your social studies topic. I know they rearranged social studies. Is that still in 4th grade? Colonial America, anybody remember? It is still there? Okay. Because I know they changed some of that stuff around recently. They made it even better because they gave you the Civil War. Okay, so what you can do is you can scroll down through this page and you can see just how simple it is to have all of those resources in one place. You can have those pictures, you can have the videos, and the quiz that's in there is just a super generic one that I wanted to add because I didn't originally have that one in there, so don't judge the quality of that quiz. But it's a great way for you to have information available and ready for students in a one-stop shop. You can share it out with students using either a link, you can give them a QR code where they can simply scan it, embed it on a website. In fact, I'm going to show you where I did that later so that it's simply in one place for them. So when you're looking to make things extra easy for students, if you have, how many of you have web pages that you already use regularly with students? Anybody? It's easy to do that. It's easy to make a bookmark for them, any kind of thing like that. So this is just a quick example of one particular type of lesson that you could set up for your students. So what I want you to do is I want you to just kind of turn and talk based on the tiny little video that you've seen. I want you to talk to your neighbors really quickly about what are some ways that you might be able to use this to support literacy or writer's workshop in the classroom based upon the things that you're already doing. Chat briefly with your neighbor about what ideas immediately pop into your head when it comes to looking at this resource. All right. So what I'd like you to do now, actually, hang on, I'm going to go back. Don't answer that. What were some of the things that you thought about? What were some of the ways that initially popped into your head about how you might be able to use Blendspace with your students?
I was thinking about the fourth grade unit. They have coming up on historical fiction.
Mm-hmm.
They have to build background knowledge on the nonfiction side of it for the time period that their historical fictions are set in.
Uh-huh.
And if like the different groups had a link to information about the Great Depression or the Civil War or World War II or whatever, then that group can use technology to research the nonfiction information that goes with it.
Yeah, and I was just talking to them up here about it's a great option for flipped if you are looking for giving them, some resources for at home. Mm-hmm. The second layer of it that I mentioned is that you can have student accounts where students log in and you do track all of that information. I believe it is a 13, like a parent permission. If they have parent permission, they can do it. You can create generic accounts as long as you keep track of who's who in there. And so, for example, that Colonial America one, when I did it before, students were asked to comment on videos that they had watched, and so that was part of their homework. So, like, I knew then coming in the next day that they had seen that content, that they were able to access it. So it's one thing. It's also great if you have those station rotations, which I believe you guys do, correct? You do stations that might be, they're independent discovery stations, and they look and they gather some of that content. So yeah, it's a great way to use that. Any other thoughts on how you might use that? Mm-hmm.
So you could load different websites for them to research.
Yeah, especially with the younger grades, I think it's helpful to start guiding the research in the front end of it, because otherwise, there's a whole big world out there. And so in conjunction with that, Padlet works in a similar way with much more student collaboration, I think, possible for taking place. And so I'll show you two different ways Padlet can be used to work with the literacy, work with the writing workshop. So go again, give me a quick little poll here. How familiar are you with Padlet? So for the most part, we're still sitting about the B's and the C's, which are, familiar, used it once or twice. We got a couple of folks who could teach this, which is phenomenal. Padlet is, and Jess knows, Padlet's one of our very favorite tools. And it can be used so many different ways. And so Sarah shared an example with me that I have that resource available for you. I'm going to show you one of my examples that I put together based on some of the content that I had available for you. But again, it's an interactive bulletin board. And in the same way that Blendspace works, you can add all sorts of different elements: videos, pictures, text, PDFs, all those different things can be put on there. And it's also web-based and available through apps. So if you do, I don't know if you're still doing it all BYOT or not, if that's kind of hit the road, but it's going to work with all your laptop, it's going to work with your iPad, so you're good to go in all those different ways. But in addition, it really allows for much more student collaboration. They've added a feature recently that allows students to comment on other posts, which is not something that they had done before. So that's great for students to give information and then provide feedback to one another. All of the ones that I'm sharing with you today have that turned off for the time being, but that is something that you can do. For those of you concerned about what students might say, you can moderate all posts. So not everything has to go up right away. It can all go through you first. But what we'll take a look at is 2 different ways that you can use Padlet with your students. So the first one is, again, going to be a web link for you. And this is set up based on the example that Sarah had shared with me about a possible way to use it, maybe as a gigantic resource hub. And so ultimately, what this particular wall has for you is links to other Padlets, in addition to the link to the Blendspace that I just shared with you. So if you were to click on any one of those, which you're very welcome to do because this is on the web, you'll find that it'll take you to a new Padlet page full of different resources on that topic. So again, you were mentioning research, preparing some content for students up front so that they have somewhere to start with their work. That's the same thing that you can do here. You can have all those pieces and parts in one place for them, have one link, have one embedded site. It's shared just like anything else. Anywhere you can put a link, a QR code, or an embed code, you're able to put this Padlet page, which is really easy, makes it a great way to access it for all students. The other way that you can use it, now this is just teacher content delivery here, but it's a fabulous tool for when students want to contribute. And I know that when Sarah and I were co-teaching, we occasionally used it as well. And so there are different ways that you can set it up, and this is where I think some of the literacy and the writer's workshop elements can possibly come in, is because you can have any question for any topic and have students contribute information. And so for the example that should hopefully pull up is George Washington's character traits. That's the or at least it was a 4th grade standard talking about George Washington. What were some of those traits that he represented? And so students are able to share their thoughts. And like I said, at the time that this one was done, students weren't able to comment on each other's, but you could allow for that to take place now. So students can start to collaborate, they can share those experiences with one another, give feedback on their writing, maybe address, what the sentence structure looks like. Maybe it's an adjective lesson that week, and you can put all those pieces and parts together. So it's merging both your social studies and some of those literacy standards all together. So let's talk about then some accessing ideas. So what are some ideas? Now the next page is going to have just some quick little examples on 5 different ways you could use Padlet in your classroom. So when I switch and you go to the website, you're going to it's really quick, take like a minute or 2 to look through it, and talk about then what ideas does it give you for your own room, because you're going to share those back out with us. Very good. So a quick little article on Padlet on 5 different ways. So I want you to scan through that, give it a quick skim, and think of what could you then do? How could this support your content, whether it's the STEM side of things or the humanities side of things? How could you make that work for you? How could you include those literacy skills that you guys have been focusing on? What could we make happen? And on the next page is when you guys are going to share those. So try to come up with an idea. All right, now for this, you've got a little quick short answer for me. And tell me, how can Padlet be used to connect content and literacy? What are some things that you might be able to do within your own classroom using Padlet, whether it's a resource site, whether it's student contribution? Go ahead and put those quick thoughts on there. I will not take off points for incomplete sentences. All right, and since there are so many options and I can already see, the one thing that I do love about Nearpod, if you are going to use it in the classroom, is I see every single one of your answers every single time. So there's not one person that you're going to miss, as opposed to, when you we're just talking to the kids and you're like, who gets it? And they give you the thumbs up and you're like, okay, did you really get it? Well, this way, yes, I can see everything that you're saying. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that top answer and I'm going to hit share, and your screen is going to see what that top answer is. And I like that because, yeah, Padlet uses are endless. There's really so many different ways. And the other thing you're going to notice about when I shared that is that the person who wrote its name is not on it. So unless that person sells themselves out, and all of your students will, don't worry, they always do it every time. But Nearpod didn't tattle on them. So you can go ahead and talk about those answers. But yeah, Padlet uses really are endless. It's honestly whatever you can imagine. I saw so many great things on there. Sharing information from your main ideas, supporting details that they've learned, question board and topic, writing a summary, examples. Any of those uses are great, and the fact that they've now added that feature where students can comment, really adding that conversation piece to it and allowing them to do that. And then the ability to share that out with parents as well. And the other great thing is that you can download a transcript. So you can get all of that content and information. We all know we do have to be accountable. If you wanted to then turn that into some kind of grade, maybe they have a Padlet rubric that they always work off of. Every time they post, they have to include X, Y, and Z. But there really are so many amazing uses for it. So what we're going to do is I want you to think about which of those tools kind of spoke to you the most initially. And so we're going to explore those further. And the resources that are on the session website are going to guide your exploration. If you'll notice that on the sheet that has a Nearpod code, there's also a QR code. But you don't have to scan it because I put the bit.ly on there. So if you'll use the web address right under the QR code that's on your little Nearpod thing, I did also put it up there so you can just take that. But you're just going to go to bit.ly/CoxPD CCES. It is all lowercase. Bit.ly is case sensitive. So you're going to find that I've got a quick little website for you. It's not the whole website, but pieces of it. You're welcome to go to the whole website. I just don't know that you need it right now. All right, and so what you're going to find on here today is you're going to find some different resources. So Blendspace and Padlet are each linked to their own independent page, which is going to have some more examples on how it can be used, and includes a great one that Sarah shared, say that 5 times fast. She shared one with me from a different teacher that did the same thing with the resources. So they had basically one major Padlet wall that linked to smaller ones that contained resources throughout the year. So you're going to go ahead, if you'd like, and pick one of those tools, Blendspace or Padlet, and you're going to see some of the examples that I've already shared with you. You're also going to see some different examples and screencasts that I put together really quickly for you. I would super love to not hear my own voice, so maybe headphones. I hate listening to it back. But there are some quick screencasts both on the Blendspace page and the Padlet page that'll kind of walk you through getting started. And only want to kind of explore that for maybe about 5 minutes, because I really would love for you guys to kind of start digging into one of those. Create a Padlet page and add a few things. Start a Blendspace page and add some resources to it. Something that you could very honestly take and use tomorrow in your classroom if you chose to. Doesn't have to be extravagant. One of the things that you'll learn about anything you start creating with tech is that the very first things that you do with them, they're going to be probably pretty low on your scale of quality, which is fine, because as you learn them, they get better and better and better. Like I said, Nearpod's one of my favorite tools, and if I go back and look at the first couple of ones I did, they're pretty terrible. And so as I learned how to use it, it gets better. And the same with this. It doesn't have to be massive. It could be just a handful of links or resources. So go ahead now and take a look at some of those Get Start pieces. When you're confident and you want to just jump right in, because maybe you don't need to go through all the resources. Maybe you're like, I just need to get in and I need to start playing around. So at the top of each of the pages, both the Padlet page and then on the Blendspace page, the official website is listed. So you can go straight to that page. If you already have an account, go ahead and log in. If you do not have an account, it's as simple as email, password, and that's about it. So choose one of those, go ahead and get started. And what I'm going to do is kind of mill about, come around. Please, please, please stop me as you get going. If you're confused about any of it, like I said, on the resource pages, I have a couple of getting started screencasts. Blendspace has the signing up, creating your first one, searching for lessons, so you can take a quick peek at those. But like I said, I want to give you this little bit of time to start making something. I don't want you to come away from this without something that you can use. So I'm going to let you get started with that. And like I said, I'll just kind of come around. Oh, the other piece that I didn't mention, which is great, I mentioned them in the screencast, but I want to mention it face to face, is that you don't have to be in this alone. All of these things, both the Blendspace pages and the Padlet pages, can be shared and remade to suit your needs. So maybe in 4th grade, you create one thing for your class, but you know what? The assessment that was put on the Blendspace page doesn't really match your needs. You can take that presentation and you can adjust it. So just because you find something that works for you, or one of your team members has made something that you think will work, you can completely adapt it to what you need in your classroom. This is a really great opportunity for PLCs to work together so that you're sharing the workload. Because yes, a lot of text takes time and work up front, but your payoff in the end is so much greater. So go ahead and get yourself started. And like I said, I'm going to come around, play around with what you've got. There are so many different options and ways to customize. And yeah, and then hopefully, even if it's miniature, hopefully what we can maybe do is share out a couple of things before we wrap up at 9 o'clock. Sound like a plan?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. All right, so go ahead and dig in, and I'm going to come around. We'll chat it up.